So I want to talk about this and then I'll let you go. But you bring up so many interesting points here. And this is the problem I have with lefties is they don't, to me, Bitcoin is this lefty socialist movement. It's this thing, anyone can own it. It's the thing that takes away the central banks. It depowers the Wall Street. It takes away the war machine. And a lot of progressive lefties are like, oh no, they don't get it. Like I keep telling them, they're like, oh, it's another scam thing. I go, there's no Bitcoin CEO that's going to get arrested. And I see it as this tool that would help an activist movement. Like if again, like all these Occupy people, some of them I know got into Bitcoin and they saw it because like WikiLeaks was getting paid in Bitcoin when they got their PayPal money taken away and all this stuff. And I'm trying to get this message across to lefties of why they should buy Bitcoin. I lost my house in the 2008 housing crisis. I lost in 2010. That's one of the things that woke me up. I got screwed over. I saw Bush and Obama bail out the banks, and I found out how it was so corrupt and they allowed these banks to steal my home. And it was gnarly. And so that's why I've been such on a Bitcoin, hey, buy Bitcoin and get out of it. But I don't know how to communicate to the left.
Well, you're making an excellent point that this is tailor-made for the left, right? Everything the left is talking about that they're concerned about with is Bitcoin would facilitate their agenda. And absolutely. AOC or these folks, they don't understand that Bitcoin is how they would fulfill their agendas. What they're hoping to accomplish as politicians, they can do it via Bitcoin, right? I mean, you're making an excellent point. It is, ultimately it goes back to, Bitcoin is an open source project, right? And open source is in the technology field is an innovation, a revelation. Linus Torvald with Linux, Linux is an open source software protocol that eventually, replaced Microsoft in many instances. It's because you've got the power of the crowd, and the crowd you could replace crowd with community, or the society, right? I mean, the lefties are saying we want to protect the society. We want to protect everyone, the least advantaged, the lowest income. Well, you do that through open source projects where nobody has a strategic advantage over everybody else, and that's what Bitcoin is. It's not proof of stake. Where proof of stake, like in the fiat money world, the more money you have, the more ability you have to make policy, to influence. So the game is to make as much money and then change the law to make it easier for you to make more money. And then ultimately the least advantaged, or the people who don't have a lobbyist working for them in Washington, they lose out. And then the lefties come along and say, we need to make it fair by giving them some money. We're going to print some money and give it to them to make it fair. But unfortunately, that crowds out legitimate investment and legitimate entrepreneurialism, which is not getting funded the way it should be, which would create the jobs and the opportunities in a more fair way. That's where the equanimity comes in, would be fairness of opportunity, not fairness in outcome. You cannot dictate outcome. You can only dictate opportunity. I mean, so this is what the left is completely missing the boat. Cenk Uygur over there. I mean, this guy is so far off the map. He's just completely missed the boat. But with Bitcoin, there's there is people. Anyway, I'll go ahead. Go ahead. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Well, I really appreciate it. I mean, the thing that was so cool about adopting Bitcoin, I was like the only comedian there, and it was all these tech and finance people, which is awesome. But the thing that I love about the Bitcoin community is everybody comes from all these different places, different walks of life, different political backgrounds. It's largely a lot of conservative and libertarian, but everyone wants to come. The majority of the people are coming in looking for solutions. And they're like, this is how Bitcoin can fix this problem and this problem and this problem and this problem. And that's what I love about it. And then ultimately, nobody's Nobody's got a problem with me because I have a different point of view than a lot of the people there. They're just like, oh, they're listening to what I'm saying. We have a discussion, maybe even a little debate, but at the end of the day, we both love Bitcoin and we see the power. We see how it can change things for the better. So as we've seen that, so what Bukele has done is amazing. I've been down to El Salvador twice now. And I mean, when I was there in June to where I was just there, 2 weeks ago, I saw new roads built in El Zonte, which is Bitcoin Beach. And like that, it's just, the progress is stunning. With possibility of Argentina going Bitcoin, I see this as like El Salvador was the first domino to fall to where more of, it looks like Central and South America, Latin America in general, are going to start going to Bitcoin. Where else do you see, I mean, what other countries do you think in the short run are going to probably adopt the Bitcoin standard?
Right. Well, it's proving to be a vote getter, right? So the Argentine election, part of getting votes was to adopt a Bitcoin policy. It's been a huge vote winner in El Salvador. And I think so. You're right. In the region, Central America, Latin America, people are starting to wake up to the politics of Bitcoin, that you can win elections with a Bitcoin policy and a security policy, pretty much the formula that was mapped out in El Salvador. And it's a huge winning formula. The President Bukele's got a 93% popularity rating, the highest in the world. It's the highest I've ever seen in my years observing these things. And so he's clearly got a good policy mix, and it's security, economic freedom, Bitcoin, and the rest of it. So that will definitely resonate throughout the region. And then you have pockets where things are popping up. So a politician in Germany just recently came out and they said they want to push a Bitcoin agenda. You've got so in Europe, all over Europe, it's differently. The countries where the currency is deteriorating, you have more emphasis to solve the inflation problem with Bitcoin. So you're going to have that will be where things perk up. In economies that are centralized, highly centralized, like China, it would be less of an issue because they are very much a very centralized command and control economy. So that's not going to be in the works. Although when China and Russia and Iran are now doing a lot of trading deals, they are walking away from the dollar and they're trading in their own currencies, and they're going to trade in gold, and they'll probably trade in Bitcoin on the sovereign level. And that will trickle down to the individual level at some point. Again, because once you start to go down the Bitcoin path, it just makes more and more sense. The more you study it, the more you use it, the more you realize how antiquated and ridiculous the current system is. And this affects everybody. So, I mean, as far as having different folks coming into the Bitcoin space of different political persuasions or different philosophies, ultimately, we all have faith that the Bitcoin is on its own vector. It doesn't need us, and it's taking us to a place we want to be, because nobody has any control over Bitcoin. It's on its own path. It's taking us somewhere. It was the discovery of this protocol, which is the discovery of perfect money. And that has impacted our societies and our species. I mean, you could say that the same way. Let's say the discovery of fire, had a profound impact on human. The printing press, the electric light, these things have profound impacts on us as a species, as a culture, as a population. And it changes the direction, the path that we're on. The path that Bitcoin is on, it's on a unique path where it crosses over from the physical world into the spiritual world in a lot of ways. I was talking to Jimmy Song recently, he's been writing some great books, including Thank God for Bitcoin. And he made the point that the concept of money is already an abstract concept to begin with, and that when you use gold, gold is a physical representation of an abstract concept. But when you get into Bitcoin, it's an more abstract, which is more in keeping with our our psyches, in our communal understanding of what money is to begin with. So it's actually we're getting back to the beginning with Bitcoin. It's almost like the big bang of our consciousness is being restarted. Yeah, we're being reset. The humanity's being to hit the reset button, because under the fiat money standard and the gold standard, humanity was heading toward extinction. I would say it's just the incentives driving the global economy were horrible. So the environments were collapsing. The biospheres are collapsing. The ability to maintain billions of people on the planet is not working, and just the whole thing is collapsing and needed to be reset. So Bitcoin is that reset button, and we're pretty young into it. We're only 13, 14 years into it. But now I think the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see that, that hockey stick moment where you go from kind of grinding along to suddenly, it takes a quantum leap, and there's huge change in people's consciousness. What is money? And I've said that Bitcoin demonetizes violence and war, because if it's unconfiscatable, it's foolish to come at me with an army to try to take my Bitcoin, because no amount of violence or coercion will separate me from my private keys, because if they're properly stored, it's unconfiscatable. There's nothing to do. So the idea of maintaining standing armies becomes kind of foolish, because you can't take the property. The property is unconfiscatable. So the only way you can get some of my Bitcoin is to come to me and say, oh, I want you to sell, I have some art I'd like you to buy, or I have a service that you need, and I'll do it for Bitcoin. So that's peace. So it monetizes peace. It monetizes love, and it demonetizes war. So that's the fact. That's an economic reality, and it's tied to the thing that people deal with every second of their lives. Every second of your life, there's somebody sending you a bill somewhere, some insurance company, some streaming service, some bank. There's a bill heading your way, and then every moment you check your thing, your iPhone, it's a bing. You've got another charge, right? So that is draining our collective consciousness to the point of becoming collectively brain dead. Humans, the walking corpses, the Aldous Huxley version of Brave New World, where we're just on the soma and the casino gulag, and we're effectively collectively dead. Bitcoin fixes this, and it resets. It goes back to the individual, and individual responsibility, and individual personality, and individual freedom. But it does so in this decentralized way, in this open source way. So in a lot of ways, it's interesting. There's a lot of paradoxes within the Bitcoin ecosystem, and in this way, it reflects some of the finest art and poetry that we have created over the millennia. Our species is full of paradox and simile and metaphor, and this is how we get along through life, is by differentiating between light and dark, and between right and wrong. And we're constantly making these thoughts in our head, and how do we fit? So Bitcoin, having a Bitcoin standard, means you have a one global measure of truth. Everyone maps to that truth. So it doesn't matter what your political beliefs are, as long as you have some mapping to the Bitcoin standard, you and I can have a conversation, because we have some commonality. Everyone ultimately will have some degree of commonality. Whereas today, in a fiat money world, we have fanatical opposition and no commonality. The people who are killing each other this month consider themselves to have no commonality. They consider themselves to be mutually exclusive. This world's not big enough for both of us, so one of us has to die. Right? So there's no commonality whatsoever. That's a fiat money system, because every time you make a mistake in a fiat money world, you can just print more money. And if you're the person printing the money, then you can take the moral high road and say, well, I'm right because I'm printing the money, right? That proves I'm right, because look at my bank account. I've got all this printed money in my bank account. That means I'm right. That's my righteous, that's my moral prerogative. I'm right because I have a lot of printed money. And so the other side says, oh yeah, well, we're going to print a lot of money. Okay. So now what happens? Well, you have inflation, right? So, and that's inflation just broke out, and it's not going to go down anytime soon because you've got people at war. Ultimately, the weapon of choice is money printing.
Right.
The Pentagon is a giant money printer. It sucks up 50% of our tax revenue to support nuclear subs, you know, in the middle of the ocean to go sail around to try to defend property that's indefensible when you compare it to Bitcoin, which is actually the only true property that's unconfiscatable, separates money from state. So these are all changes that are happening, and this is what the institutional money is realizing, the BlackRocks and these other folks, about Bitcoin. And so you're going to see a rotation out of these other assets like stocks and bonds and property and gold. They all get demonetized. All that flows into Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin price continues to head toward 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, and all these other things just continue to be demonetized and end up like the Venezuelan Bolivar, just litter, garbage in the street that people just, you know, use it to line their cat boxes. You know, it's cat litter essentially. You're wrapping fish in this stuff. It's worthless stuff. It's ridiculous. You know, I would tear some up right now, but I don't have any handy. But usually at this point, I start tearing up paper money, and I'm like, hey, it's worthless. But you know, it is. There's nothing to it.
Well, Max, this is awesome, man. I love having you on the show. Thank you for taking time. I know it's like a holiday week and everything, and explaining this. And it's important for my audience to hear. My audience, like I said, I really want lefties to wake up to this thing, because to me, it's a tool for lefty activism. But I love how you explain it, and everything that you're saying, I totally resonate with, because just these Pacific Bitcoin and Adopting Bitcoin conference, hanging out with all these Bitcoiners, I see this, what you're talking about. There's all this artwork. People have all this creative.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so art, you know, typically all the lefties like to go to Museum of Modern Art and drink some wine and eat some brie and talk about, you know, Kant and, you know, Keynes and Paul Krugman in the New York Times. And there's plenty of that going on in Bitcoin. You know, if you want to see art and drink wine and eat French cheese, you can do so in Bitcoin. We're not going to throw you out. You can be a culture snob and read the New York Times. We're not going to hold that against you, because we know that if you're in a Bitcoin room, that you have some hope. There's some hope yet for you. You know, even though you're in the Washington Post and you're degenerate and a parasite and brain fogged and tone deaf, you know, it's okay. You're welcome into our room, and because you understand at least the beginning of Bitcoin, you're willing to take. You know, I started Shitcoiners Anonymous.
Yes,
you know, for these shitcoiners, for like you know, BitBoy is this guy. He's a classic Shitcoiner Anonymous. Like, you know, the shitcoiners they're just. They need to go to Shitcoiners Anonymous. You know, they're addicted to the shitcoins.
Yeah.
And they act out and they lose it all. They just lose it all. And so you see it all time and time again. But the point is not to try to. They have to you know, hit bottom with their shitcoins, and then maybe they'll from there they can enter Shitcoiners Anonymous and recover. They can recover from their shitcoinery, right? But so yeah, I mean, that's one of my major contributions to this industry, is to recognize that the shitcoiners, they're not just wrong; they have a disease.
Yeah,
shitcoining is a disease. It's not just bad technology. It's not just bad incentives. It's not just crooks and greedy people. They have a disease, and we shouldn't hold that against them, especially when there's help available at Shitcoiners Anonymous.
Well, that's great that God can grant you the serenity to accept the fact that shitcoins are bad.
Oh yeah. Well, I have the whole 12 steps I laid out, and I read it out at the event that we were both at.
Yes.
And where was that anyway? Adopting Bitcoin?
That was Adopting Bitcoin, the comedy show at Adopting Bitcoin.
Where was that?
That was in El Salvador. That was
right, El Salvador. And that was great. We I think a lot of people were happy to hear that path being built out of their darkest hour. They should remake that movie Lost Weekend.
With shitcoiners.
With the shitcoiner. They're hiding shitcoins in under the bed. They're trying to keep their shitcoining secret from their family. They lose it all. They're on the street. You could get BitBoy. I'm sure he would play the lead in Lost Weekend, the shitcoin version, and get him for like $10 because he's flat broke now because of his shitcoining.
Yeah, because he lost his Lamborghini. All he's got is a fanny pack.
Yeah.
Well, this was awesome, Max. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It was great seeing you come up in El Salvador. I will be back there, and I'm going to come down and stay a lot longer. And there's all that stuff you and I talked about. I'm working on all that. So, so thank you to you and Stacy and everybody in El Salvador, because it's truly amazing. I travel a lot, and I've been to a lot of countries just in the last couple of years, and El Salvador is like one of the only places where there's hope. I mean, it's really it's palpable there. And it's not just the Bitcoiners that have moved down there. It's the locals. It's the El Salvadorians have hope. Because like you said, when you arrest the gangsters, everybody basically got a 30% pay raise because they're not paying extortion money every week. So everyone's like free and safe and happy. And it's fantastic. So it's great.
You saw the new library that they just opened up?
Unreal.
Right. I told you, like just 2 blocks from there, you can buy a building for $100,000 and open up your own comedy club.
I'm working on that, Max.
What the hell are you doing? What's this rocket? What is this channel? Where am I? You could have your own yuck clubs in El Salvador.
I am
Graham Elwood presents El Salvador yuck El Salvador. It's the new Times Square of Central America. They had 55,000 visitors the first week to that library. Wow. They could have all been at Graham Elwood's yuck club. We get some laughs and a pupusa for $5. What are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you?
I'm just trying
Los Angeles. The place is a dump.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, Max, if you can help me with some investors for Graham Elwood's yuck club, I'm down there tomorrow.
Okay. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm in. I'll do it. I'm in. Max, thank you so much for being on our show, man. Tell Stacy I said hello. Tell everybody in El Salvador I said hello. And we will talk to you very, very soon, my friend. Happy holidays.
Bye.
All right. Take care.